Thank you, Maddie and Imogen. If that doesn't awaken us and deepen us, I'm not sure what will. So as I sort of hinted to in the children's message, and quite frankly, I can't really remember it because I'm operating on probably about 3 hours of sleep, the dog ate my homework last night. As in, when I went to open up my files for today, last night, about halftime of this Steeler game, they were gone. It said, cannot access file, cannot find file. Now, fortunately, I had emailed some of the other stuff to some other people, so I was able to take it from their emails. But this message, completely rewritten until about 2:30 in the morning. And then I got up at 5 so I could finish rewriting it. As many of you know, I'm working on releasing myself from the manuscript. And I was crying last night, saying, God, really? I don't really think God works like that. I really don't. I don't think God pulls strings like that. But you know, I really don't know. Do you? We've all had experiences in life that we just can't explain. Some of them on the tops of the mountains. Some of them in the deepest, darkest valleys. Some of them explainable. Some of them completely unexplainable. Well, that is where I am today. That is where I am this week. You see, traditionally, pastors are paid to have all the answers. Well, I'm telling you right here, right now, I don't. More than 20 years in the ministry, which means statistically, right, I've come across this passage 7 times. I've studied this passage 7 times. I've preached, in theory, on this passage 7 times. And this week, I saw something new. This week, God revealed to me something I'd never seen before. Something I'd never felt before. All I came up with was questions. You see, the Jesus that I grew up with was perfect. We knew a little bit about his childhood, right? Like that one scene where he goes with mom and dad on a pilgrimage, and on the way back, they can't find this pre-adolescent Jesus. Tell me Jesus is not grounded forever. That would be fully human, wouldn't it? But what do you and I, what do we remember about that story? We remember that Jesus was found, right? Where? In the temple. Doing what? Teaching the rabbis. The fully God part is what we know. It's what we proclaim. It's what is safe. The Jesus I studied at Princeton, Tom and I overlapped a little bit there, was technically human, but his incarnation fell steps short. Fell steps short of its being actually human-like. He never messed up. He never fell short. He never said sorry. He always had the perfect reasons for saying and doing what he said and did. So if he happened to speak harshness rather than compassion, if he behaved in ways that were ethnocentric and downright offensive and rude, if he called a hurting pleading, woman, a dog. Well, he had perfect reasons for doing so. How's that for being fully human? The Jesus I preached for more than 20 years was the perfect Jesus. The fully God part of Jesus Christ outweighs, outshines, outlasts the fully human part of Jesus. Because someone is always watching. Someone is always waiting for you to say something heretical. So we play it safe. And I think it's awfully ironic that Tom called me on Friday and said, hey, David, I'm going to stop by. He's my boss. Did you know that? Not really. The presbytery is the boss, but he's the executive presbyter. You know how it is, right? And so Tom has to pick this Sunday to come when I'm standing up and saying, I don't know. And on top of that, I'm going to say some things that really push the edges. And on top of that, my carefully worded script is gone. Thank you for laughing with me. Push it, preacher. So I would say that we preach and we teach as fully God Jesus, not as fully human Jesus, which makes it a half-incarnational Jesus. So is this text trick, test, or transformation? What if this text was about Jesus tricking this woman into devotion? In verse 22, the Canaanite woman desperately pleads for the help of her daughter and shouts, Lord, have mercy at Jesus. Kyrie eleison, Lord, have mercy. It is a prayer that has been cried, sung, and chanted for centuries of desperate people. You might have even prayed that prayer. And the disciples miss it again. Known widely throughout the Middle East as a slur, Jesus calls her a dog, an ethnic slur used by Jews against non-Jews. It's hard to fathom that Jesus would even think of such a racist, prejudiced word, let alone speak it. Dog. Yet there it is. Recorded in Mark and in Matthew, coming from the lips of the Prince of Peace. So does he trick her into doubling down? Some pastors, theologians, and scholars, ironically, I PTS, right? Pastors, theologians, and scholars. We're PT-SEM, right? Princeton Theological Seminary. There's another one called PTS, Pittsburgh Theological Seminary. So some pastors, theologians, and scholars think so. She desperately pushed back, basically calling herself a dog. And I don't know about you, but I've got problems. I've got problems with the Prince of Peace being a trickster. It just doesn't jive with what we've read throughout the entire gospel. So what if this text is about Jesus testing the disciples? This complicated and difficult story falls after Jesus accuses the Pharisees of being more concerned with purity rituals and traditions than the commandments of God to love, to respect, to honor. Yet here in Matthew 15, Jesus is the one who does break from tradition, who does not break from tradition to aid an unclean foreign Gentile. Do you see how that could be a test? Okay? So if you look at the whole chapter, right? Jesus is talking to the scribes and the Pharisees, saying you're worried about purity laws and your traditions. And it's taking out the love of God. So if you follow through the whole chapter, Jesus does that, and the disciples don't get it. So Jesus says these words that are confusing to us, but really it's pretty simple. What goes into the mouth is not what is ugly and disgusting. It's what comes out that is ugly and disgusting. It's our words that defile God. And the disciples still don't get it. So, very important note here in the text, he takes them north. Most people miss this. He transitions north within the same chapter to go to where the Gentiles are. And the disciples still don't get it. Then Jesus gives them a real life example. It's a pattern throughout the gospel. Look at it. Correcting something, some wise words about it, don't get it, and then real life examples. In this case, this is very important, don't miss it. He calls her a dog. While his face is facing her, he's looking at the disciples, seeing if they catch it. He's testing them. Do you really get it? I still don't buy it. The whole idea of the means justifying the ends is something my parents taught me to never believe. It's something that God says time and time again throughout the biblical text to never adhere to. So what if this text is about transformation? Check out what happens next. Jesus speaks in public with a Gentile woman. This would have been scandalous. Add to that the fact that it's a woman, and she's far from being submissive. She talks back. In the trick or test section that I tried to give you a glimpse of the extraordinary gymnastics that pastors, theologians, and scholars go through to interpret the text, to match their ideas, to match their beliefs, to construct something that works. And in doing so, to avoid the clear implication in this story. As another Will's, Gaffney, spells it the same way, as Will's Gaffney puts it, in that moment, something happened to Jesus. Jesus, acknowledging that he was wrong, changes his mind. This Gentile woman becomes the woman that changed Jesus. Could it be? I can see our professors rolling over in their graves. Could it be that Jesus was actually still learning about the fullness of this divine embrace and the scope of his calling? Is it so hard to imagine that Jesus might actually have been learning something, and that he might have learned something in this encounter with the Canaanite woman? Might this woman have been a part of God's divine plan to transform his only begotten Son? As I look at the men around this room, we know some women who have transformed our lives, don't we? Our better halves. So was it trick, test, or transformation? I don't know. What I do know is that my little mind cannot fully comprehend God, let alone the fully human, fully God Son. Today, I challenge you to read scriptures differently, to understand Jesus differently, to understand God differently, and to go out and to live differently. Friends, as Stephen Toole, a friend of Calvin's and a retired professor from the other PTS, quotes Debbie Thomas, the Jesus who appears in the Gospels is not half incarnate. He is as fully human as he is fully God, which is to say, he struggles, he snaps, he discovers, he grows, he falters, he learns, he fears, and he overcomes. He's real, he's approachable, and he is authentically one of us. The good news is not that we serve a shiny, inaccessible deity that floats 5 feet above the ground. It is that Jesus shows us in real time, in the flesh, what it means to grow as a child of God. He embodies what it looks like to stretch into a deeper, truer, and fuller comprehension of God's love. Amen? Amen. Amen.